Welcome to Musings of a Super Doer with host Christina Kendall. Over the next hour, you will learn what keeps Christina and her guests busy with all their day-to-day life tasks. Now, here's Christina.
Hello there. Welcome to Musings of a Super Doer. I'm your host and resident super doer, Kris Kendall. I'm so glad you're joining us today. So in this episode and all of our episodes, I'm going to share just random musings about what's going on in my world and maybe some things that you can relate to in your world too. So today we're going to talk about all-inclusive resorts. I'm going to share a story about when my son was little and didn't want to go to school and how we handled that. And then I'm going to spend a little time talking about some pet injuries and pet insurance randomly. And then if we have time, I'll share some musings about a few other things I'm doing at the moment. Okay, so let's just jump in and get started. So recently, I might have talked about a trip I was going on with my mother's group friends. We went to Cabo San Lucas in Mexico, and we stayed at an all-inclusive resort called the Marquis. It's right on the ocean, and I think the beach was called Sunrise Beach, and then like down the way a little bit there was a Sunset Beach, but I believe ours was Sunrise Beach. Anyway, so we were there at the end of February, and apparently that is whale birthing season. We had no idea. So from our hotel room and from the pool and pretty much the restaurants everywhere that we were for our entire stay, we could see whales playing right outside of, where we were sitting in the water, jumping around. There were babies that were following the moms and, jumping and blowing, and it was so cute. So anyways, it was a beautiful time to be there, but specifically about all-inclusive resorts. So if you haven't stayed in one, it's really, it's an amazing, it's amazing. Okay. So I have stayed in a couple over the years. We did one in Cancun like 15 years ago, a long, long time ago. And then obviously, if you've ever taken a cruise, those tend to be all inclusive, especially if you buy the drink package, where pretty much all your meals and your drinks are included, so you don't have to pay each time. So the really nice thing about it is, up front what you're spending, right? You're gonna pay for this preset amount, and you don't have to worry about, you don't have to do any calculating who's ordering, extra, the steak or the pasta or the seafood, whatever. Just, you have anything you want. And especially if you like to imbibe in the alcoholic drinks while you're on vacation, those can add up, right? So a friend of mine was saying she was on a cruise recently. She bought the drink package for like $400 for their, X number of days cruise. And her guests that were with her, her friends, did not buy it. And their drinks were like $24 a piece. And the paid drinks come in these little tiny glasses. And if you're on the package and they know you're going to be drinking a lot, they put like 3 drinks in one, and they bring you this giant drink. So it's really nice. So at the place that we were at, right when you arrive, you're greeted with like a margarita. They take you to your room, and there's a mini bar in the room with candy bars and chips and nuts and drinks, beer, water, chocolate milk, kids. Well, not really kids drink. This particular place didn't allow kids. It was adults only. So that was an extra special bonus to have no kids running around, no babies crying at any point. But yeah, they have like juice and, like the Mike's Hard Lemonade, like all these kind of drinks, and then just sodas, Sprite, Coke, whatever, in the mini bar, and they stock it every day. So you could have whatever you want. You're not, worrying about paying $15 for a mini can of Pringles. And so, you have your snacks, and then when they come and clean the room, they just refill it with, more. So that was awesome. If you are traveling in a country that you don't normally have to tip in, so, a lot of countries don't do gratuities the way we do here in America, where pretty much anytime you go to a restaurant, you're expected to leave, 15 to 20% tip. And I think during COVID, we got into the habit, or at least I personally did get into the habit of leaving large tips for like every service provider, which sometimes I'll be honest is a little bit annoying. Like I go to pick up, I order a bagel and they hand me a bagel, and then when I'm paying, they're asking me about a 10% tip. It's like, or 20% tip. It's like, really, isn't this sort of just your job? But anyways, I tend to give pretty good tips in general. And so know in advance what the what's culturally appropriate for tipping, and bring small bills to cover that, because there were 4 of us on this trip, and we realized pretty quickly that we all had 20s, and we didn't have a lot of small bills. And so even just, wanting to give $5 to the person who brought us one drink, or whatever, something like that, we just had big bills. So learn what the amount is that is appropriate for tipping, and then bring the right number of bills to support that. One of the tricks that I learned, so basically what we did at this resort, it's beautiful. It's kind of a higher end resort. So we didn't leave the resort the entire time. I'll be honest, I was a little bit nervous about traveling to Mexico. There's all these travel advisories and warnings and stuff. So we used the hotel shuttle, which we did have to pay for. I believe that was a separate cost. We used a hotel shuttle from the airport to the resort, and that was like a 35-minute drive. And then once we were there, we didn't leave until we took the shuttle back to the airport 4 days later. So it was, for us, that's what we were doing. We weren't there for like an adventure trip. We literally would go to the breakfast restaurant in the morning, and then we would go to the pool, and then we would go get a smoothie. And they have like a whole little coffee shop that'll do whatever espresso drinks. They had like donuts and muffins and cookies and that kind of thing. So all of that's included. That's where, a $5 tip would be appropriate, but not required at all. And then we would go back to the pool, and then we would go to get lunch. They had several different restaurants. Some of the like kind of nicer restaurants did require a reservation. So fortunately, my friend who was planning, she did all of the she made all the reservations in advance. So every night we had a dinner reservation. But if you don't do that, or if you just kind of want to play it by ear a little bit more, they do have more of the casual dining restaurants that you can just pop into anytime you want. So there was like always a taco bar pretty much open kind of all day. So that was really nice. And then like a buffet kind of restaurant. And then we went to the hibachi. They had like a hibachi sushi kind of place that we went to 2 nights. And then there was like a nicer Italian place that we went to one of the nights. So all of those included there. I think there was another restaurant that was maybe French cuisine that you had to pay extra for. So that one was like higher end and a little bit, actually it was kind of expensive. I want to say it was like $140 per person extra. So it was a pretty high end meal if you went there, but we decided not to do that. And we were very happy with the food in all of the restaurants. And so, yeah, we just hung out, and what we would do when we got to the pool in the morning is give our waiter, because we pretty much had the same, the waiters or the staff, the wait staff all have areas that they're working, right? So our person would be our person for pretty much the whole day or most of the day. So we'd give them like $20 in the morning, and that would, be sort of our tip for the next many hours to keep bringing us drinks and keep checking on us. And then when we were ready for fries or tacos or burgers or whatever, we could just order that and he would bring it to us. And So we really never had to leave, and we just hung out the whole time. It was wonderful. And the best thing that I liked is that you don't feel nickel and dimed. When you go to those places that, every single thing you have to pay for, like, oh, sure, you forgot your toothbrush, sure, that's $5. And, like, it's nice to just have access to everything without feeling like you have to pay for every single thing. So that was really kind of the best part. Now, the resort that we were at was a spa, did have a really nice spa, and those services were extra, which we all expected and, makes sense. So, we did have to pay for massages and facials, and, if you were to get like a mani-pedi or something like that, that's included. But they had actually staff that were kind of interactive and playing games and doing fun things throughout the day too. So, somebody would walk by and be like, hey, we're doing a wine tasting in half an hour if you guys are interested, or we're going to be playing beach volleyball. You guys up for a quick game of beach volleyball? Or are any of you guys interested in doing yoga right now? Or they have, different activities throughout the day. I think they did like water aerobics, and every morning they would take a group, whoever was interested, on a walk along the beach, and to, I don't know where they went actually, if they went to town, like to the little shopping area, or if they just walked up and down the beach. I slept in, so I didn't do that. But yeah, it was really nice. You didn't feel like you had to keep paying for things or asking like, well, how much is this excursion? How much does that cost? Whatever. And then, at the end of the trip, you have no idea what you've spent, because it just like kept going and going and going. This one, we knew how much we were paying going in. We obviously did have some additional fees for like the spa treatments and the travel, the transportation. But for the most part, the estimate that I was thinking in my head was only like $100 or $200 more than what we went in, from what I started with as, what I thought the trip was going to cost versus what it actually cost when we kind of added everything up at the end. It was really very similar. It was not, we didn't spend a lot of extra money. So that was really nice. It was a great trip, a beautiful location. So if you have not done all inclusive, definitely consider that. And if you like to cruise and you haven't been doing the drink packages, maybe that's worth looking into. If you're not a heavy alcohol drinker, I think a lot of the cruise lines do have like a soda only kind of a package. But then you kind of know what you're spending. And then one of the other things that I was thinking, this particular resort, but all of these all-inclusive places, there was a wedding that happened while we were there. So the first day when we arrived, a bunch of the wedding party was also arriving. And then over the next few days, you could see them doing their various, like the rehearsal dinners, and then the actual wedding happened. And the staff was really good about kind of keeping the rest of us, the guests, the non-wedding related guests, sort of out of the space for a little while they had their ceremony, overlooking the beach. It was a beautiful location. But that's the perfect way to do a destination wedding if you're planning something like that, because everybody pays for their own meals and drinks because it's all included in their room price. I want to say the room here was about $2,500 for two people. So it's pricey. And that was for 4 nights. So maybe it's like, I don't know, whatever that works out to be, $600 a night or something. But so, it is a little pricey, but as the bride and groom, if you tell everybody to book their own rooms and then all of their meals and all of their drinks are included, I'm sure they had to pay extra for like some of the venue stuff, like to reserve spaces, reserve a restaurant or whatever. I'm sure that there were extra expenses that the bride and groom had to pay, but not the kind of expenses that I would imagine usually you have to pay if you were to do a wedding today with 50 people or something. Now, if you were having a huge wedding, maybe that doesn't make a lot of sense, because with that many people, not everybody's going to be able to afford to attend something like that. But if you're planning a small destination wedding where you're going to invite everybody and you know that only 25 or 50 people are actually going to be able to join you, this is definitely the kind of place to consider for that trip. So I loved it, and I had so much fun, and I highly recommend doing vacationing that way if you have the opportunity. Okay, so we are going to take a quick break now. You can go grab a snack, check your stocks, do what you need to do. And when we get back, I'm going to share a story about when my son, who was about 5, decided he didn't want to go to school anymore and how we handled that. Just a silly story. Okay, we'll talk to you in a few.
Welcome back to Musings of a Super Doer with your host, Christina Kendall. Have a question for Christina or her guests? Join us on the show at 866-472-5788. That's 866-472-5788. Now, back to the show.
Hey there. If you're just joining us, I'm Kris Kendall, host of Musings of a Super Doer. Before the break, we were talking about all-inclusive resorts and some of my recent experiences with one. And now I'm going to share a silly story about when my son was little and didn't want to go to school. So I have 2 boys. The younger one was very stubborn. The older one, I could bribe, I could, distract him, I could, move him away from whatever he wanted pretty quickly. The younger one, man, once he decided on something, he just would not let it go, whether it was like something he wanted, something he didn't want, whatever it was. So he went to a home daycare from the time he was like maybe 5 or 6 months old until he was about 5, and it was time for him to go to like kindergarten. And so we put him in this kindergarten that my older son had gone to. We knew the teachers. It was a great program, great school. We, were very comfortable there. He loved it. Everything was great. He had probably been going for a couple months. And then all of a sudden, he just decided he didn't want to go anymore. Like, dropping him off in the morning would be this huge tantrum. And it just got progressively worse over a couple days. Like and it's not like anything was going on there. Once he was there, he was fine. He played. They had no problems with him after he got over that initial, like, I'm not going. But like, I would, carry him into the classroom and sort of hand him over to the teachers, and he'd be like flailing and lashing out and waving his hands and just making this whole big scene. And he was really just being stubborn. And so this got progressively worse. And one day I couldn't he wouldn't let go. I think he like tore the necklace off the teacher and it broke, and it was this whole thing. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't really know what to do, but I couldn't not do anything, right? So it's one of those things. So I'm like, okay, fine. And I'm first of all, I should preface this by saying this was 15 years ago. Different time back then. This is not something that would fly today. I wouldn't do it today based on just the way things have changed in the past 10 years or whatever. But at the time it worked and everything was fine. But yeah, I was a little bit of and still we're very strict parents. Like we're very casual, and we allow them to do almost anything, but for the things that they aren't allowed to do, they are not allowed to do, period. Like there's very strict rules for the things that we actually care about. A lot of things we don't care about. The things that we do care about, and being respectful is one of those things that's like non-negotiable. There is zero tolerance for, that kind of behavior with a teacher or at a school or anything like that. So I was just like livid, freaked out. This is not going to fly. So I said, fine, you don't want to go to school anymore. get in the car. You're going to go to the police department because when you are a kid, you have to go to school. And if you don't want to go to school, then you go to jail. And he said, fine. And I said, fine, get in the car. So I drove him home. Granted, on the drive home, he's like trying to get out of car seat. He's trying to open the door to the car. I had to like do the child locks on the doors to like keep him in the car, like just this crazy, wild tantrum. So we get home and I take him inside and he thinks he's home free. Like, awesome. I'm good. I'm home for the day. And I said, go pack your bags because you got to go to jail now. So, he doesn't believe me. And my husband, who was home, he's like, what the hell's going on here? I'm like, just go with me here. So I called the non-emergency number for our local police department. And I live in a small town, in the suburbs around a lot of other towns. So my like police department is pretty small. So I called the non-emergency number, and this was say like a Tuesday morning or something, so they weren't like super busy. So I called and I'm like, hey, is there a police officer that is not very busy at the moment who wouldn't mind coming by my house and just kind of scaring my kid who doesn't want to go to school? And she's like, how old is your son? Like, is that for the high school? And I'm like, no, he's 5 and he doesn't want to go to school. And I told him he has to go to jail if he doesn't go to school. And she's like, she got all indignant, like, we are not here to scare children. And I'm like, okay, no, I get that. I'm just, if they're not busy and if somebody's around, maybe they could just swing by, like, I was just wondering if that was possible. And she's like, what's your address? I'm like, okay, so you're gonna send somebody, but you're not gonna actually take him, right? And then I'm starting to get nervous, like, oh shit, am I gonna like lose my kid here because I've got this crazy idea? She's like, just what's your address? I'll see if somebody's around. I'm like, okay. So I give them the address and I tell my son, like, hey, go, make sure you have a bag packed. They're coming, they're on their way. And he's looking at me like, he's still not really sure, but he saw me on the phone and he doesn't really know what to think. So I wait and I kind of fill my husband in on what I'm doing here. And a police cruiser pulls up in front of the house and parks. And I'm like, oh, Ryder, they're here, get your stuff. They're picking you up. And so he like looks out the window and sees that there's actually a cop car there. And these 2 guys get out, these 2 officers, and he's like, eyes go wide and he's like, oh my God. So he like runs to me and like, I'll go to school. I'm like, they're here. So I open the door and these 2 guys, they're standing there and they don't even they do not say a word. Like, I opened the door because I'd been kind of watching before they even knocked. So I opened the door. I'm like, oh, hey, thank you so much for coming. We really, he said he doesn't want to go to school anymore. So I told him he's got to go to jail. And they're looking at me and he's like, I'll go to school. My son says this. And I'm like, are you sure you're ready to go to school now? And he's like, yeah, I'll go to school. I'm like, oh, okay. So I turned to the officers. I'm like, well, I guess he's going to go. So we're all set now, but thank you so much for coming. And I go and I put him in the car seat and I have my son or my husband, get in the car with him and they drive away. And these officers literally still haven't said anything. They're looking at me like, what just happened? So I'm like, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I know you guys are busy and, this really helped a lot. And so they're like, okay, so that's it. That was what you needed us for. I'm like, yes, that's it. You're good. You can leave now. And so they drove away and he went to school and we never had a problem with him after that. He was perfectly content to go when he needed to go. He loved being there. He had a great time and he's, a really good student still. So, it wasn't anything about the school or not wanting to be there. He was just testing that limit and showing that he had control. And I showed him that he didn't. And that worked out for us. Now, again, today, that would probably not work out the same way. Number one, police officers are probably much busier than they were, and they wouldn't have time for that. Secondly, that's probably some sort of like a CPS issue or something. I don't even know what it would be, but it's probably not a good idea to use your local police department for um, those kind of scared straight things. But, it worked. And if you do have access to somebody, maybe a friend who's a police officer who could stop by and scare your kids sometimes, I think that is perfectly reasonable. A lot of times these kids, they don't actually have um, a real reason for whatever they've dug their heels in about. I know me personally, I was pretty stubborn for a lot of things. And I think back, like there was zero reason that I absolutely refused to do this thing or that thing. I just decided one day I wasn't going to do it. And then in my head, I was never, ever going to do it no matter what. And so it's unreasonable. But anyways, so that gives you a glimpse into my parenting style, for better or for worse. I'm happy to say he's a senior in high school now. He has survived that. He's never misses a day. He really hates to miss a day of school. He has 4.0, excellent grades, and no issues. He's generally a people pleaser, so we don't have any issues with teachers or anything like that. So it's all good. But yeah, just sort of a funny way that we handled that. Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is pet injuries and pet insurance. Now, this is something that, so we've always had pets growing up. We always had pets, but they were like always outdoor dogs that I didn't really like play with. They were like part of our family, part of the household, but they weren't like the kind of pets that I have today. So once I became an adult and I like went and bought a puppy from a breeder, then she was like our whole world. She was our baby. We our whole schedule revolved around her. I was going to, quit my job so that I could be a full-time puppy mom. Like it was this whole crazy thing. Um, so we are now those kind of pet owners, right? But even at that level, we never had pet insurance because I think pet insurance was just sort of making its sort of becoming a thing maybe when we started getting pets like 20 years ago. And every time I've looked into it, it's super expensive. It's like, $100 or more a month. And then you think like, okay, well, that's $1,200 a year. Am I actually going to spend $1,200 a year? I mean, most years you probably don't. If you're just getting a couple shots and, maybe a set of antibiotics or just a regular exam, that's maybe like $400 or $500 total. So, in most cases, you don't spend that much money, but, like all insurance is for those unexpected situations, those extenuating circumstances that you really wish you had it. And I am a little bit superstitious in the fact that I think that when you have insurance, you never need it, right? Like I get insurance on a lot of things because I feel like once I'm paying for it, then I'm never going to have a problem and I'm never going to need it. So obviously that's not always true, but I kind of felt like if I bought pet insurance, then I'd have like the healthiest pet in the world and I would never ever use it. It would just be a big waste of money. Now, saying that out loud, I feel like, okay, it was probably worth $1,200 a year to have the healthiest pet in the world. So I should have just been doing it all along, but I didn't. I never did. And so during COVID, back in spring of 2020, early in COVID, when everyone was getting a pet because everyone was stuck at home, we did too. We had been planning on getting another dog. And so that was seemed like the right time. We were going to be home for a while. We could really train it and spend the time with a new puppy. So we got a new puppy. Sage. She's a chocolate lab, super hyper, super cute. And, we are very diligent and very good pet owners in that we got all of her shots and she's been to all of her appointments and all that kind of stuff. And she's been super healthy. So we haven't really had any issues, but, about maybe it's been 2 months now, a couple months. in the course of like 10 days, she had 2 emergency room visits that probably added up to about $8,000. So now we have pet insurance. now I'm a believer. But basically the first one, I don't even remember what the first one was. She wasn't feeling good or something for whatever reason. We thought that there was an issue. I think there wasn't really anything. It was no big deal. But because we were concerned, she wasn't eating. She wasn't eating and she's into her food. They eat twice a day. And so all of a sudden she just wouldn't touch her food. And we actually never really figured out what it was that, why she stopped eating. But like if we would hand feed it to her, she would eat out of our hand, and she just eats like dry kibble, and she doesn't eat any people food. So, yeah, I don't remember exactly what it was, but she was fine. And after a couple of days, she started eating again. And I think maybe we switched her food, like maybe the bag that we had was a bad batch or something like that. So we just got rid of that food. We gave her our other dog's food. The other dog's on like more of an elderly dog diety kind of food. So we gave her that and she was fine with it. So in the end, it was no big deal. But just a couple days later, I was getting my hair cut. I'm driving home and I get a text saying that Sage got into my inhaler. I have an albuterol rescue inhaler, and she bit into it and she was high off of this albuterol. And I'm like, albuterol is very toxic and poisonous. So if she is, we need to get her to the vet. And so she was, I guess, like hyper, like crazy. And then her heart was it was, racing. So we took her to the emergency vet again. And they had to put her on oxygen and monitor her. And I think they had to give her fluids, like, I don't know, saline or whatever, but they had to give her fluids because she was dehydrated. And there were a few times when her heart like got a little bit too fast that they had to give her something to sort of slow it down. So it was just like a 48-hour process. And it was like a $5,000 process, right, for this whole thing. Because we didn't know how much she had. I had the inhaler, and there's like a little metal canister that sticks out of it. It was punctured because she had gotten it with her teeth, right? So we didn't know if a lot got into her mouth or just a tiny bit, but it was enough that she was having some kind of reaction. So every time I talk to anybody at the vet's office, they're like, well, do you have pet insurance? Do you have pet insurance? And I'm like, no, we don't, so just whatever it is, we'll pay. And so after that, I looked into this pet insurance, and they would have covered 90% of that bill. So that $6,000 would have been 90% covered by the insurance company, or at least reimbursed, right? And so, if you add up the $1,200 that I would have spent in premiums, plus my portion, it would have been much cheaper had we had the pet insurance. So after that, and because she's now only, she's going to be 3 soon. So she's still young enough and still wild enough and playful enough that she's going to probably get into some predicaments over the next, many years. I went ahead and I bought the pet insurance. Now there's a couple different, companies that are kind of the big companies. So I would shop around. At my job, we have these like benefits for employees where you get like discounts on certain companies will give you a discount. So there's a company called Spot, SPOT. They offer discounted pet insurance and I think it's like 10 or 20% off the premium for employees. So that was one I looked at. I think there's one called True Panion. That's the one that the vet recommended. She said she gets 0 kickback. She has to pay full price for her pets. So there was no reason, there was no like benefit, but she's used them and she's had no problems with them. So that was one that she recommended. And then I had been watching, this was right around the beginning of the year, January 1st kind of thing. And there was a commercial that had been on the TV, and I want to say it was like Colonial Penn, or I don't know, one of these like traditional insurance companies offered a pet insurance program. So I looked at those three. Now, the lowest cost that I could find was maybe $60-ish a month, and that didn't cover as much. It was really kind of a minimal coverage, and then the most expensive of them was about $300 a month. And that covered pretty much everything. I think it was 90%, plus it also included some other things, but those other things we didn't really need. So in the end, I ended up going with Spot, because I got the discount from work. And with that discount, and with, what they cover, I think the premium was about $100 a month. Plus I added this extra thing that was $25 a month. And it includes like some additional prescriptions or something, but it includes spay or neuter, and like every other year teeth cleaning, or some extra thing that you don't have to do very often, but you do on a somewhat periodic basis. And Sage isn't fixed yet, so we are going to have to pay to have her spayed this year. And so that worked out, because I looked into the cost of the spaying, and I want to say it's like $300, something like that around here. So between, what I expect our normal visits will be, if there is some sort of other emergency or quick thing that we have to take her in for that we aren't expecting, and with the spaying, we'll have most of that bill covered. And so, I wish I had this in place 3, 4, 5 months ago, and it could have covered more of our emergency situations. But hindsight's 2020. And so it's in place now. And I guess best case scenario is I pay the premium and we never use it, because she stays perfectly healthy and injury free for the next 10 years. But who knows what'll actually happen. So as a previous non-believer in pet insurance, I think it's worth checking out and taking a look at if you haven't, and if you have a pet that is young enough. Now, if you have a much older pet, you have two options, right? We have an older dog as well. And with that dog, either we will, like if we found out, for example, she had cancer, we would either put her down, or we would pay for all the cancer treatments and prolong her life by another year or two. So what you're likely going to do if that happens, right? And so if what you think you might need to do would be to pay for prolonging the life for another year or 2 or 3, however long, then it's probably worth getting pet insurance. If that's not what you would likely do, I think with ours, we would probably not choose to prolong for 1 extra year or maybe 2 extra years with a lower quality of life. So we don't have pet insurance on that dog. As things come up for her, we will take care of them. And if there is a very, very big thing that comes up for her, then we will decide what to do at that point. But I'm a big believer in not selfishly keeping animals or even people alive when they have a very low quality of life. So that's a whole different, we'll talk about that on a future episode, but yeah, so that's my thoughts on pet injuries and insurance. Okay, we'll take one more quick break, and then we will be back to wrap up with a few other things that I'm working on.
Welcome back to Musings of a Super Doer with your host, Christina Kendall. Have a question for Christina or her guests? Join us on the show at 866-472-5788. That's 866-472-5788. Now, back to the show.
Hey there, and we're back. For those of you just joining, you missed some fascinating conversations about all-inclusive travel and toddler tantrums and pet injuries and insurance. So now I'm just going to share a few musings about some of the other things that I'm doing. As you know, it's always a lot of stuff. So, well, just kind of get started on this week. It's been a busy week. Okay, a couple days ago, like literally 3 days ago, I want to say it was Tuesday or Wednesday, I'm watching the news and I hear about some situation, and I'm going to be very cryptic in this discussion right now because it's still early days, but I heard something that happened on the news that was, a very upsetting thing. And so, I just kind of thought about it for a minute, like, how could we stop that thing from happening in the future? And like, I just got this idea, like, this makes so much sense. Has anybody thought of this before? I looked it up. I can't find anything that somebody has, put into place. So I decided I am going to invent this thing. Now, I should say, this is not the first time I have said I am going to invent this thing because I have done it many times. And I I have invented sort of a few things. Usually I come up with an idea and I hope other people will do stuff with it because I'm not like a manufacturer type of person. However, this thing I'm pretty into, and I think that I can actually make it happen. So I started writing a patent. Um, Totally random, don't know anything about the patent process, but I looked up some information. I looked up some patents that are written in a way similar to what I need done. Those are for products that do a different thing, but they're close enough that I can use them as a guideline. So I'm basically, starting with those and just making all the changes, to make it work for me. So sort of as a template. Right now I'm at the point where I'm trying to decide if I should just submit. I mean, literally this was 3 days ago, right? Okay. I found somebody on Fiverr, FIVERR.com, that I used to draw this thing for me. So I came up with some stock graphics that I found on deposit photos, a couple things that I found on Google. I just put together like, this sort of hodgepodge of images. I sent it to this designer and said, can you make me a patent drawing that's sort of like this, but make these other changes? And I just sort of, Frankenstein something together. He came back 24 hours later. It was $60. I got 2 images, gorgeous, perfect, exactly what I asked for. And so I think I'm ready to like submit this patent. So there's 2 ways to go. You can file for a provisional patent, which is what I should do. That is like, I guess from what I understand, is basically saying like, hey, I've got this idea and I want to hold my place for this idea. So I'm putting it out there. I'm claiming it as mine, but I don't have everything hashed out yet. I still need some time to work out the details. And it sounds like I think you get about a year, about 12 months to figure out the details. And then if you need an extension, you can get an extension. Okay. So that's probably the right thing to do. And hopefully that is what I do because I think it is the right thing to do. But the other option is just to submit it as like the full patent, as if I knew what I was doing and as if I had a patent attorney working on this for the past 6 months and it was like perfect and ready to go. And I might do that too. Maybe I'll just put it out there and see what they say. I think worst case is they reject it, right? Worst case is they come back and say, you didn't really give us enough information about this or that, or it's too close to this other thing or whatever. Because I haven't done a ton of searches. Maybe this thing does already exist. I don't know. But from the brief searches that I've done in the past 3 days, I haven't seen anything like it. So, I'm at this like, which way do I go? Should I just do the right slow path and see if, just kind of protect it and then talk to some engineer friends and talk to people who know more and then, really get it dialed in perfectly? Or do I just go for it and see what happens? And best case scenario, they just approve it and then I'm good. I can take it to Shark Tank and me and Mr. Wonderful can work out the details together. I don't know. But I'm working on that. So stay tuned. Once I have one of those two things filed, either the provisional or the full-blown patent, I will be able to talk about it a little more and give you some detail. I think what I'd probably need to do first, like once that's done, I think I need to have some kind of a video created and then put out a Kickstarter, maybe offer it as a Kickstarter to give me some money to have it built, right? To raise some funds to actually take it to manufacturing. But we'll see. I'm not there yet. First, I've got to figure out this whole patent thing. So stay tuned. Okay, one of the other things I have been doing this week and last week is applying for grants. So I've told you all about my nonprofit, micro entrepreneur space. Well, I'm getting some traction with that. I've gotten several people who want information about receiving a grant, but also getting some of the curriculum that I'm working on to. So what I'd like to do is I'm trying to create some like workshops and seminars that can be presented at like middle schools and high schools throughout the country, right? So I've been putting this together. I've gotten some interest from people that want access to that. And then I actually spoke last week at the high school, my son's high school here in town, because it is Women's Entrepreneur Month. Or no. Women's Empowerment Month, which is also known as something about history, right? Women in History Month. I don't know. Some sort of women's month is this month, I guess. I can't even remember, but I think we're calling it Women's Empowerment Month, at least at the high school. So one of the leadership teachers invited me to come speak, and I talked about entrepreneurship and this organization. But I need money, right? So I can't help the people that I'm trying to help without funding. So I've been applying for these grants. Now, I know from my past experience in corporate philanthropy that there is a lot of money out there, and there are companies that want to give it away. I mean, they're just like looking for places to give it because not only is it a big tax advantage to them, but it's, something that they can brag about. It makes them look, like good people, right? So there's money out there. And I've been trying to find some of it. So far, it's been a pretty okay process. There's a couple like websites that list, tons of grants. And so I've been kind of working my way through that. Some of them were really easy to fill out the application. Some of them were a little bit more difficult, and one of them I've already gotten my rejection letter back. So whatever I did wasn't good enough. But I can understand why nonprofits employ grant writers, because there's a lot that goes into that whole process. So that's been fun. And then separately, I am also starting to think about grants just for my business. So not nonprofit, but for some of the things that I want to do on the business side, I might try to apply for some small business grants with. So we'll see. Those are all just a little bit up in the air, and we'll see what happens there. Okay, and then the other thing I've been working on, which sort of applies to both of those first things, is I am I'm joining a new coaching certification program with a company called Hello 7. I think I talked about Hello 7 maybe a few episodes back, when I mentioned Rachel Rogers and this book that she wrote called We Should All Be Millionaires. Amazing book. I recommend all women read this book. And after I read it, I was talking to some friends, and I said, if she had a program, a mastermind or a club, she's got this thing called the club, but it only opens up a few times a year. But I said, if she's got openings, I'm going to join, because I don't care what it costs. I need to be a part of this. And it's closed. It was closed, so I couldn't join. But within a few days, she opened up this brand new coaching program. So I'm like, well, this is it. This is, what I need to be doing. So I'm signed up for that. And we just had our first, kind of meet and greet yesterday, but I'll be working on that over the coming months. And I think it's like officially over, finished, completed around December. So I've got, for the next 7-8 months, I'm going to be working on becoming, getting certified in the Hello 7 money coaching, business coaching, and like mindset coaching program. So I'm super excited about that. I know that it's going to be a challenge. As you all know, I've got a lot of things going on as a super doer. There's never a shortage of stuff happening in my life. But this is one of the things that I think is going to be kind of next level for me, and the next thing that I want to do. And it's going to get me to, I have some very specific goals for this year. And I think that this is what's going to help me achieve some of those goals. So I'm super excited about that. But I'm still doing my publishing coaching. I'm still doing all of the stuff that with my current clients. So none of that will change. It's just adding another level of coaching to my repertoire. Okay, so friends, I think that pretty much takes us to the end. We are out of time for today, but I'm super glad that you've been able to hang out with me. I hope that some of this stuff that I've shared has been at least entertaining, if not horrifying. Either way, I respect that. My way is not always the best or even a good way, but it's the way I've done things. And, so until next time, I hope that I've inspired you to be a super doer too. We've got a really cool guest speaker next week. So I'm excited to have that conversation with all of you. So make sure you come back. And for now, goodbye from your host and resident super doer, Kris Kendall. Now go do something.
Thanks for tuning into Musings of a Super Doer with Christina Kendall. We hope you've enjoyed today's show and look forward to having you back next week. Until then, have a beautiful week.